Hey guys, Chris here from Christopher Sports Announcing, and I wanted to answer a question that I have been being asked quite a bit actually since I started recording and announcing my four boys' sports games. And the question is this: why don't you go and be a professional sports announcer? That's flattering, I suppose, but as far as realistically, I'm thinking, yeah, I probably would have needed to go to journalism school and get a degree and then start to work my way up or something. I feel like a public address announcer, which is really what you're doing if you're announcing a live game to the live audience over a PA, is not the same thing as play-by-play or color commentating. And if you were sitting in a stadium, the volume of the PA address system is so loud that if somebody were filling every spare second with a play-by-play and an update and detail and analysis, it would wear your ears out. And you would be like, can you please give us a break for a second? And it'd be so loud. And so it's just really not the same thing. And that's why PA address speakers, commentators, they're not commentating, they're actually just calling a very vanilla, basic description of what's happening. The number, the name, the action, tackle, a run by, then the down and distance, and then they hush until it happens again. And if they score touchdown, if it's a turnover on downs, they'll say that. But it's all very basic in case somebody missed it or was looking away. That's really what that's there for. So worlds different, in my opinion, than play-by-play announcing, which is really what I love and what I think is really fascinating. And what I would like to invite so many people to is, what about you announcing your own sports games? Not your own like you're playing in it, but your kids' games or your siblings' games or whoever you've been tasked with videoing that game. What if you added commentary of your own to it? And I've told people that hey, you should do that. And usually the objection that comes back is, oh, I could never do that. I don't know enough about it. I don't like the sound of my voice. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people are like, no. So what happens instead is usually you get somebody screaming into the microphone of the camera, and then when you want to watch it back, it's like, oh, could you turn that down? I'm thinking of my own sports days when I played high school football, and my own dad was actually the voice of the Lions. I went to the Leander Lyon High School in North Austin, and he sat in the press box and he would give public address announcing to the game. So my mom was the one with the camcorder, as it was in the late 90s, early 2000, and she'd have it up on her shoulder. And so whenever something good would happen, she'd just go to, yeah, go, all right. And so then you're watching it back, and you're just like, Mom. And she's like, I know I sound terrible. I don't know why I was screaming into the microphone. Well, it's because you can't help yourself. You're excited. But if your mentality is, I'm actually going to call the game and not just cheer for the game, then it's not your mentality. Your mentality is something totally different. And it really adds so much interest. But everybody's recording sports games. I go to my boys' football games before they start. While they're warming up, I'm walking down the sideline or something, and I see about 8 different iPhones held up in the air to get over people's heads, and they're just shooting video. I just think it could be a game changer on listening back, watching back. You're going to send your videos to relatives who weren't there and didn't get to experience it in person. You're going to watch it back years later, and so why not make it more interesting with announcing? And so what it does is it creates a soundtrack to what you're viewing. For instance, if you were to watch the movie Top Gun, and Maverick came out not too long ago, the second Top Gun, and you're sitting there and all of a sudden the screen is black. There's nothing visually happening, but audibly you hear that famous gong or whatever it is that starts on that song, You've Been Called Back to Top Gun, or whatever it is, and you're hearing a sound that you recognize, and I mean, it's like the world stands still and nothing else matters except I'm about to immerse myself in this story. And you haven't seen a thing yet. It's the power of the sound. And so when you announce a game, your announcing is the soundtrack to what you're watching. You may have never thought about this before. You're like, I have never given 2 thoughts before to actually announcing what I'm seeing. And so there's some strategy involved to make it better and not so obvious and everything, but it creates a much higher level of pleasure if there's announcing versus just visual stuff. Also, it helps the viewer make sense and understand what it is they're seeing. It's possible that somebody's watching it, like a grandparent, and they are not so sports savvy. So when you can give description, then you're actually helping them enjoy the viewing experience because you're telling them what's happening. And they're like, oh, that's why they replayed that down again. I didn't know that. I don't know what the referee's doing when he does this with his arms. And so you help add knowledge and understanding to the viewers by doing it. And then also, whenever you announce a video, it tells a story. You're actually giving a narrative to what's being seen. And so when we watch games back that we've announced before, inside of the announcing, you hear the story about, so-and-so who just scored and how many times he scored this year. Or maybe that's his first time to ever score before, and how excited he must be and his family must be. You're giving narrative, you're giving story, and all of a sudden the interest level just spikes to whoever is watching the video. Those are just a couple reasons why announcing whatever it is you're videoing really makes a lot of sense. And so here is a couple of tips I would give if you are going to tackle this. First one is stay objective. Nobody wants to hear all of your strong opinions about whatever it is you're seeing, because it's possible that their opinion is different than your opinion, and that's okay. In fact, if you've ever been in an environment where the public address announcer, let's say, is clearly biased, which makes some sense because it's a home game and it's his team, but whenever his team scores and he gets super excited, even though I'm cheering for the same team, it's borderline annoying because I want him to get excited neutrally. Whenever there's an exciting football play or basketball play, I want him to get excited all the same. And I think that'll make the whole experience of the whole atmosphere with everybody so much better rather than staying so biased. Another reason not to give your opinion is because your opinion may be wrong. And in sports, your wrong opinion will find you out oftentimes. And so you might say something like, oh, that was pass interference, hands down, clear as day. Granted, if it was obvious, feel free to say it. And then you watch a replay back. If you're announcing somewhere where there's a Jumbotron, you can see it and you're like, actually, it wasn't. Everybody probably knows it wasn't. I thought I saw something different. Now I have to decide if I'm going to be humble enough to go back and retract my thought, or do I stick with my opinion and say, no, I still think it was You just lower your credibility. So if you're going to announce games, stay objective. Another thought, if you're going to announce games, is state the facts. Give the facts of what you know rather than what you think. And so even separate from opinions, you may have a thought, an idea about something, but you really don't know for sure. I was announcing one of my boys' football games when one of the ball carriers fell awkwardly on his arm, and I was pretty sure he broke it. It looked like he broke it, the way he was writhing in pain on the ground and how long he was down for seemed to say, hey, this is a serious injury, likely a broken arm. But I restrained the temptation to say what I thought and rather just said what I knew. And what I knew was that he was hurt. And I may have said he landed on his arm funny because I saw that. I saw him land on his arm funny. Wasn't for sure that that's what the injury was. And so just tried to practice a little bit of restraint so that I kept my credibility high. And then later, once I had gotten a report, because the camera had gone off for a while, because it was about 40 minutes before the ambulance came off and got him, which is another tip that probably what I thought was correct, but I didn't want to jump the gun on it. And I did get report that, yeah, you could see the break in the bone on his arm from somebody and all the swelling. And so all signs pointed at that point to a broken arm. Well, now I knew that. And so I could then go ahead and report that and say that. And so that's just another tip to keep your credibility high, is to just announce what you know rather than what you think. And then finally, use brevity. Be brief. Rather than over-explaining something, err on the side of under-explaining it. And the reason why is because it's a video. Whoever is listening to you is also watching, and they're making their own assessments and ideas about what they're seeing. And so the more you explain something, the greater the possibility of you contradicting what they've already thought in their mind. And again, that lessens the experience of the viewer and the listener. And so if you can kind of get in and then get out and paint a picture to what they're hearing, again, it's the soundtrack to what they're seeing, then it's going to be a better product. If you are doing radio, however, now it's just a listener. There is nobody watching. And so you can go ahead and over-explain things. If you've ever listened to Craig Way announce a Texas Longhorn basketball game, there's a lot of description, or a football game for that matter. He tells you how the outline of the numerals are and what color that is and the stitching and what direction they're moving, across your dial left to right. If you're announcing something that somebody is seeing, there's no need to say all that. And it would be overkill, overboard to say all that. And so you want to keep it brief. Don't over-explain something, because if you do, you're going to contradict what somebody else is seeing, and then it's not going to work as well as it could if you were brief. So you're just adding taste to what they're already seeing. It's a lot of fun, and I think you really can produce something that is much more special as far as a keepsake goes if you announce to what you're videoing. So challenge submitted, and I hope you are brave enough to try it out. I'd love to hear about it if you do. Maybe send a link. I'd love to see it, because I think it's kind of an untapped art form and will be to your advantage if you do it. So anyway, there you have it. See you guys next time.